record.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining our great events this evening for Contest Functionaries. So welcome, Todd. Welcome, Sharad. Welcome, Sherry. And Raji, if you need to journey away, this would be your time. But I'll start. So we've already covered contest chair. We covered how to plan and prepare for a contest. We've covered chief judge, how to do an area and how to do a club contest, how to do an area and division contest. This is about the functionaries that haven't already been covered, and they're very specific. When do you start planning your contest? Now. It's never too late. We're right into contest season already. It's the 1st of February, and that's when clubs start doing their contests, and areas follow, divisions follow, and then it all leads up to our May conference. So we're going to cover the Sergeant at Arms, the contest Toastmaster, timer, excuse me. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Timer, and I did it singular, but we'll talk about the fact that you need 2 timers. And ballot counter. We're also going to talk, what I mentioned already, covered in other sessions, was the contest chair, chief judge, and tech chair. So this is going to be the deep dive into these 4 roles. Now, if you have questions at any time, you don't need to wait for a spot. You can raise your hand, or you could say, Solazar, I have a question. We'll just go ahead and share that question. Don't let it get too far afield, away from your question, or worry that something has to be said before you ask your question. So feel as comfortable with that as you can. Now, global rules are co-hosts at your contest should be the Sergeant at Arms, contest Toastmaster, chief judge, contest chair, and your assistant tech chair. And your host should be your tech chair. All contests, area contests, and division contests are online. You need to have a tech chair. Tech chair was covered in separate training, which is also on the district website, the YouTube channel. And that was presented by Carrie Lynn Morgan. So that was excellent training. So follow up on that. We're not going to cover that today. The Sergeant at Arms is part of the Toastmasters team and part of the Chief Judge's team. He has or she has roles that serve both of those teams. And so we're going to cover that. They're responsible for starting the contest on time. They introduce the area or division director, who will introduce the dignitaries at the contest. So the Sergeant at Arms sets the tone and must be familiar with the contest scripts, which you can also find at this URL, which I'll be posting later into the chat. And that has all the contest material. The Sergeant at Arms announces attendance rules. And what do those attendance rules consist of? Well, they consist of stay muted. We want attendees to turn off their video during the contest. The only ones that should have their video on during the contest should be the speaker, timer 1, and the Toastmaster when the Toastmaster is addressing the speaker. Other than that, we want everybody else to have their videos off during the contest. The Sergeant at Arms also helps monitor the chat. One of the rules the Sergeant at Arms would give at the beginning is that stay out of the chat. Allow the chat to be used for the contest team to communicate back and forth without a lot of intermediate chat. Now, usually after the speakers have all spoken, the Toastmaster will say, if you want to send a comment directly to that speaker, do that. But we don't communicate to everybody in the chat. Only the contest team uses the chat, and they need to know when the chat has something that they need to focus on. So the Sergeant at Arms brings out that rule. And the Sergeant at Arms monitors the contestants in the breakout room. And this is the area where the Sergeant at Arms has that crossover rule. Everything so far is really about the contest and the Toastmaster. But when they get to that breakout room, they're also supporting the chief judge. And this is where they go into their double levels of responsibilities. Now we're going to touch on that a little bit on the breakout room in separate areas going forward, but let's talk about muting someone on Zoom. Has anyone here not know how to mute someone on Zoom if you're in a Zoom meeting? Raise either your physical hand or your virtual hand. Does everybody know how to mute someone on Zoom? That's good. So what you do is you find the participants section down here at the bottom of your screen, and you should be able to find that right now yourself. Now, because you're not a co-host or host, you won't be able to mute anyone, but you can click the participants here in the bottom of the menu bar. If you don't see a menu bar at the bottom, you click anywhere on the screen, it'll bring up the menu bar. And then it'll open up a menu on the right-hand side, and you can hover your mouse over the participant's name and click the mute button to mute the audio of that participant. Now, if I'm not the Toastmaster and I'm not the speaker, and someone is speaking, the important thing is that all unmuted people move to the top of the list. So in order from the top of the list, when you click on the participants list, you'll have the host, co-hosts, and then who else is unmuted. And so it's easy to identify that person. And this is a good role for the sergeant at arms during the contest to keep monitoring that chat so the tech chair can stay focused on the audio and video of the speaker, and the assistant tech chair can also stay focused on people entering and leaving the meeting. So this is a role of the sergeant at arms in the contest. Another thing that going into the sergeant at arms, the sergeant at arms can check that the tech chair has the breakout rooms created before the contest. Now, this is a dual role because we want the Toastmaster to check. Go ahead, Chirag, you had a question, so I'm going to go back. Go ahead.
No, just a general question on the, you said all the attendees should turn off the video. What if people join late? Or how do you communicate that when people are joining, let's say 5 or 10 minutes late?
Okay. Well, usually I communicated that by calling the local sheriff's department and have them picked up and dragged out. But no, here's what happens. You set up, and this is a tech chair issue. You set up your contest so it has a meeting room, a waiting room rather. So what happens is everybody who joins comes into the waiting room. The assistant tech chair should be monitoring the waiting room. Now, because hosts and co-hosts will get notifications that someone's in the waiting room, but it's up to the assistant tech chair to say, okay, we'll use Philip. Philip just joined the waiting room and you're speaking. Chirag, you're speaking. So we'll bring you in, I send a message to the waiting room. We'll bring you into the meeting as soon as the speaker is finished. So it lets them know, one, you're acknowledged, you're in the right place, but we're keeping you there till the speaker is done. And
Okay.
that's it. And then once the speaker is done, the assistant tech chair can bring that person into the meeting.
Okay, got it.
Does that address the question?
Yeah, yep, yeah, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, so let's go forward from that. So like I said, the breakout room, you want to make sure the breakout room is created before the contest. Not open, but created. Again, this is a tech chair thing, but the sergeant at arms should check to make sure everything is in place. Now, a couple of issues about the breakout room. It's opened for the evaluation contest when the test speaker has completed his or her speech. So what happens is the test speaker speaks. Nobody should ask for the breakout room to be open. The assistant tech chair can open the room, or the tech chair can open the room, or the Toastmaster can ask the tech chair to open the room. Doesn't really matter at that point, but it's only when the test speaker is done. And then the sergeant at arms and the contestants will be moved to the breakout room. So because the evaluation contest, they're going to have 5 minutes to prepare their evaluations after the test speaker speaks. During that time, the Toastmaster, which we'll talk about, will interview the test speaker, but the sergeant at arms is monitoring the breakout room to ensure that it's managed and that everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. Once the sergeant at arms and contestants are moved to the breakout room, both the timer and the sergeant at arms will start timing 5 minutes. Now I'm going to touch on this on the next slide because it's really important to understand. During the 5 minutes, the contestants compile their notes and prepare their evaluation. The timer is going to be the official 5-minute timer. The sergeant at arms is timing so that he can actually not only answer, he's going to answer questions while he's in there, but he can notify the contestants when they have 2 minutes to go or 1 minute to go. So if the sergeant at arms is timing, he or she can provide that to the contestants to let them know you have 2 minutes, you have 1 minute. There should be no talking in the breakout room. The sergeant at arms can answer questions, but keep the room quiet as they prepare their evaluation. The official 5 minutes is up when the tech chair notifies the sergeant at arms to bring the first contestant forward. Is that clear or okay? Any questions on that? Okay. At the end of the 5 minutes, contestant 1 will be asked to return to the main room. The sergeant at arms doesn't go, just the contestant. The rest of the contestants are asked to keep their hands visible in the Zoom window to prevent them from doing additional notes or typing additional notes. They don't have to hold them up like they're being arrested, but they need to just keep their hands visible so the sergeant at arms can see them. Now, for those who did in-person contests, you may remember that what would happen is the contestants, at the end of the 5 minutes, their notes would be collected by the sergeant at arms and held. Their notes would be given back as they went out to the main room to do their presentation, to do their evaluation. This is a version of that. So this really allows us to know that they're not continuing to take notes. Their minds are thinking, and they might even look down at their notes because we don't physically collect them, but we just don't want them taking additional notes.
I'm so sorry. This is Suri.
Hi,
Can you
Suri.
just repeat that because we have in-person contests?
Okay, so for the in-person contest, you won't have a breakout room. So your club contest must be in person. So you're going to
Yes.
have a separate room at the end of the test speaker. You're going to ask the sergeant at arms to escort the contestants to the breakout room. Wherever your room is, I'm calling it breakout room, but you physically escort them to another room. They'll be given 5 minutes to complete their evaluations. The same thing. The timer will start timing 5 minutes once they leave the room. And the sergeant at arms actually, once he or she leaves the room, should probably start their clock just to be as in sync with the timer as possible. The sergeant at arms sits in the room with them. The reason is to prevent cross-talking. They're not to be sharing notes or anything else. They actually take their notes. There is a form that Toastmasters provide for evaluation notes, but they should have a line pad and just make their notes. At the end of the 5 minutes, the sergeant at arms needs to collect the notes. The easiest way to do that is to collect it in the speaking order. So if Jayaprakash is first, I'm going to collect his. Chirag, I'm going to collect his. Philip, I'm going to collect his. Alex, I'm going to collect his. I'm going to hold them. Once the 5 minutes is up, Jayaprakash, I give him his notes and send him back to the room. I'm going to collect his notes first or let him hold them, one of the two. But I'm going to hold the rest of the notes. Then when the first evaluation is up, usually in a physical contest, we would have someone whose job is to come back and say, send the second contestant. Now, in physical contests, if it's a lot of contestants, I usually have 2 sergeant at arms. One who does the contest and escorts the contestants out. The other one stays in the room for the main room. And as soon as the contestant is done, goes back and tells the sergeant at arms in the room, contestant 2. And then he or she will escort contestant 2 back. At that time, contestant 2 is given their notes. Does that make sense, Suri?
Sorry, one question. So the first one, we take the note, whoever speaker first, we take the note from that speaker. And are we allowed the second speaker?
No, you take the notes from every speaker.
Okay, but okay. Okay, thank you.
But you
They
can
only
let,
have 5 minutes.
if you know, the 5 minutes are up, Jaya Prakash can keep his notes because he's going right to the room anyway. He's speaker one,
Okay,
you know, but
okay,
you have to collect everybody's notes. No, he doesn't leave the room till everybody's notes are collected.
okay. But then we can give it back to that contestant when they're
Well,
ready to go, correct?
when that contestant is their time to return to the main room, they're given
Yes.
their notes back.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
And did you understand about having somebody to come notify the sergeant at arms to send the next contestant?
Yes.
Okay. Anything
I
else
think
about that?
that would be a Toastmaster, right? Can we
Oh,
use that?
yeah. I usually make it a second sergeant at arms. You know, I
Okay.
give them kind of like an official role so I can give them a participant certificate, you know.
Okay.
But if you're doing it at a club contest, you can give everybody a participant certificate anyway. So,
Thank you.
so you could have anyone do that. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on that issue? Thank you for asking that, Suri. And I do
You're
have a
welcome.
tendency. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I say you're welcome. I'm
Oh,
gonna mute myself.
well, thank you. It's very, oh, you don't have to mute yourself. All right, so we kind of covered that for the physical, and then as each contestant completes the evaluation, the tech chair in the online contest will notify the sergeant at arms to return the next contestant to the main room. Now, keep in mind, when they're coming back physically or virtually, we're doing a minute of silence. One of the things we want to do is make sure the contestants know not to walk in there speaking, like, okay,
I like
I'm,
2 pieces of chicken, please, and a drink. Just the chicken? Just 2 pieces of chicken and a drink, please. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Alex, was that for us or for?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the question, Alex. Or was he ordering dinner? I don't know. All right. But what I wanted to come back to is that we want to let them know, don't walk in talking. It's the minute of silence. Judges are marking ballots and doing all types of things. We want to make sure that they know the sergeant or whoever escorts them back can tell them where to go. They should tell them, go up to the front of the room and the Toastmaster will call you from there for the physical one. For the breakout room, we want to tell them, for in the virtual world, we want to tell them, go back to the room, remain muted and quiet until addressed by the Toastmaster. Now, in the script, it has a couple of things that are asked. And so if you're doing a physical one, it would be very similar. Let me just do the physical one for Suri right now, which would be, timer, thank you, our 5 minutes are up. We're ready for our next contestant. The contestant knows to kind of come forward. They're not ready to come to the podium or the lectern, but they're ready to come forward. And then I'm going to say, Jaya Prakash, that's it. That's the total introduction. Comes forward, shakes hands, just like you do at any Toastmaster meeting, and goes to give his evaluation. In the virtual world, we also have the script that says, speaker, can you see the timer? So that's the first thing. They want a verbal assent. So now the speaker knows they can speak. But before that, they shouldn't walk in and say, do I go? Do I speak? Do I do? Been to too many contests where that happens. Just remain quiet. Be patient. I know their nerves are going. When the last contestant is called, the sergeant at arms leaves the breakout room with the contestant. And that's it. We're kind of done with that. I think that kind of lays out the breakout room process. So are there any questions about the sergeant at arms, the breakout room, or even some of the responsibilities of monitoring the chat or muting people? Okay. And by the way, Suri, in the physical contest, sergeant at arms can't mute anybody unless they have a billy club and
Sorry, can you repeat that?
oh, I said
You're just
in
joking, right?
I said in the physical contest, I'm sorry, my volume's down. I said in the physical contest, the sergeant at arms can't mute anybody unless they have a billy club. So they hit them over the head. That's all. Just a cheap joke. Philip got it. Todd got it. I got two out of you, so I'm good with that. Now the Toastmaster, the contest Toastmaster, you may have one for each contest. You may have one for evaluation. You may have one for international. But the contest Toastmaster is the point of contact for the contestants. He or she is their host and hostess. So the contest is about the contestants, and the Toastmaster is the one that's there to help them get through the process. They should be familiar with the contest script, just as the sergeant at arms should. They should know the contest flow. How are things going to flow? They're going to start by telling the rules. They're going to explain how they introduce everybody and why. Then they're going to, in the case of the evaluation, they're going to ask the tech chair to move the sergeant at arms and contestants to the breakout room. And then they're going to introduce the test speaker. The test speaker is introduced just like a contest speaker. We don't care what club they're from. We don't want to know anything else about them. I'm sorry, they're not going to the breakout room till after the test speaker. We don't want to know anything about them. We want to know their name, their speech title, their name. That's it. We're not giving any clues to the evaluators to say, oh, yes, I know that club. I've seen you there, or whatever else. We just introduce them: name, speech title, name. The test speaker gives their speech, then the sergeant at arms and evaluators are moved to the breakout room. Then the test speaker is interviewed. And once the interview is, the first evaluator comes back. After the first evaluator, a minute of silence. During that time, the next contestant is brought into the room. Then they go through the process with the second contestant, and so on. So that's the contest flow, and the Toastmaster needs to know that. For international, there's obviously no test speaker, but the flow right up until the test speaker is the same. Then we have the first contestant, second contestant. In international, the contestants don't leave the room. In evaluation, they do. So they don't hear the evaluations given prior to theirs. So the Toastmaster of the contest, either one, needs to know their flow and know the rules. What are the rules? Because the contest Toastmaster is going to be briefing that later during the dry run. The contest Toastmaster is also expected to send the information packet to the contestants. That's a speaker certification of eligibility and originality. So eligibility is, I'm a paid member of a club. The club is in good standing, which means it has 8 or more members, and the club has paid my dues to Toastmasters International. They also send the speech contest profile. In addition, although it's not here, you should send a copy of the speech contest rules for that contest to the speaker. Now, TI recommends you send the contest rule book. I don't know too many people are going to sit down and read the rule book to find their rules. I've always chosen, as either contest chair or Toastmaster, to put together the packets with the rules for the contestant that the speaker is a part of, so they can focus on those rules. This is a link on Toastmasters International where you can enter a member's name and also say which contest they're in, and it tells you whether or not they're eligible. So eligibility should be checked before the contest. The speaker's certificate of eligibility and originality is provided by the Toastmaster to the chief judge, who then also will generally should go in and check the eligibility checker as well to make sure, because the chief judge is the one that's going to say in the contest, the contestants are eligible. Now, I'm going to give you a heads up. Suri, you have a question, I see, but let me give. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
You say that about certificate of eligible is a Toastmaster job or is a chair contest chair?
Well, the contest Toastmaster is the host or hostess for the contestants.
Yes.
Here's what happens from a practical standpoint. So thank you for asking that question. very often the contest chair is coordinating things before the Toastmaster is even assigned. But all of that information needs to come back to the Toastmaster, not the contest chair. Because the Toastmaster is the one that needs to make sure the speakers are eligible, and the chief judge needs to make sure the speakers are eligible. Now, what's also important about the originality certificate for the contest Toastmaster, it also has the speech title on it. And the contest Toastmaster needs to know that speech title. So doesn't affect, of course, an evaluation. There's no speech title from the evaluator, but those types of things. So my recommendation when I'm a contest chair is for my Toastmaster to do this. Although as contest chair, I'll very often prepare the packets so they're put together the way I said, where I have the contest rules for the contest and send it out. But the contest chair should not be responsible for the contestants. They should be responsible for the total contest. Okay. But I'm going to tell you, people like to do their own thing. So don't get into an arm wrestling contest if you have a contest chair that says, no, I want to do this, I'm going to do it. Then fine, do it, as long as it's done. That's really the important thing.
I happen to be a contest chair and I want to do little as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, my recommendation again is put the packets together, give it to your Toastmaster, say, here, Philip is a contestant in evaluation. Here's the packets I want you to send out to the evaluation contestants. Raji's a contestant in the international. Here's the packets I want you to send out. One, that way you know you have a consistent packet going out to the contestants. Two, you know the contestants are now communicating with the Toastmaster.
Okay.
You know, the other thing I do, and this is me because I tend to try to do things, is I'll sometimes draft a sample email for my Toastmasters to send to those people, you know, because I want to make sure some of the information is consistent, but it also depends on who my Toastmaster is. So you can decide how much you have to do. You are carrying the burden already. I recommend you have the Toastmaster do this.
Thank you.
Toastmasters need to know how to introduce the contestants, and this is what I was talking about earlier. I've got so many Toastmasters in the evaluation contest that come up with creative ways of introducing the contestants. There's only one way, and it's in the rule book. Name, name. So my contestant is Surrey Marley. Our first contestant is Surrey Marley. Surrey Marley. That's it. You're done. You're up. You know, and the contestants need to know that when you go through the dry run. In addition, international, of course, is where we do the name, speech title, name, which is what I recommended you use for your test speaker as well. You know, and again, that's how we introduce the contestants. And during the dry runs with the contestants, we want to let them know that's how they're introduced. They also, the Toastmaster should understand the contestant tech requirements. Here's what I mean by that. They don't have to do the requirements. But I'm a contestant communicating to my contest Toastmaster, who's Philip. And I tell Philip, you know, I need to do a background thing, and I want to use music, and I want to do all this. He's got to coordinate that to know that I have tech requirements. It needs to be presented to the contest chair and the tech chair to see what can be supported and what can't. But the Toastmaster should be the one that knows that and says, hey, you know, Solazar's being a pain in the neck and he wants to do all these fancy things, you know, but can we do it? And essentially, he needs to know that, but he doesn't do it. The Toastmaster is not responsible for the tech requirements. The tech chair is. And the contest chair is the one that agrees to what props can or can't be used effectively. Now, we did have some challenges in evaluation, so we generally have tried to minimize or discourage any use of props in evaluation because we just speech, there may be backgrounds, there may be music, there may be other hand props. What you're concerned about is any prop that's going to require tech support from the tech team. You know, if I'm just going to hold up a book, you don't care. And then the contest Toastmaster should prepare contestant interview questions, and that's where the profile helps. Now, I know we have these unnerving standard questions that we ask that people don't like. what club are you from? Which club are you representing? But what we're really trying to do is, one, we want that contestant to be able to say, this is my club. We want that out there. I know it seems like, oh God, what club are they with? How long have you been in Toastmasters? Have you ever competed before? But we can prepare a variety of questions to go with it. But it's, again, the key about the questions is the interview is about getting to know the contestants. So one thing that I'm not comfortable with, others are, but I'm not comfortable with asking everybody a different question. In other words, I asked Philip, where did you go from school? I asked Jaya Prakash, and how many children do you have? And I asked Suri, did you ever climb a mountain? I'm more comfortable about trying to lay out a standard of each of the contestants and a similar type of question. So it's not a variety show. It's about trying to reveal the contestants. That's about it. Contestant interviews also allow time for ballots to be tallied. Now, when you're doing two contests back to back, you do evaluation, you might have an intermission or break, and then you go to international. You don't have to have a long interview in the evaluation because there's enough time between the break and everything for the ballots to get tallied. But in the international, there's a challenge. Ballots are being tallied. And it's while that's going on, you're interviewing the contestants. My recommendation to contest Toastmasters is always ask those standard questions first to everybody, then have a next set of questions. But you ask one, and you ask it to contestant one, and then you ask it to contestant 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you come back and you have another question. You start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If at any time during the interview process, the Toastmasters notified that the ballots are tallied and the results are in, and I'm only on contestant number 3 with this question, I'm still going to go to contestant 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to give all of them the opportunity to answer that question. And I know, Suri, as a contest chair, you might be looking at the time saying, Solazar, shut up, the ballots are in. Let's get it on. But I want to give each contestant the opportunity to feel that they actually got asked the same question, that it wasn't cut off or they weren't shorted, So I try to treat all the contestants equally in terms of the questions. Now, with the contest chair, the contestant dry run is scheduled with the Toastmasters. Now, obviously, attendees include the contestants, but the chief judge is also there, the tech chair, the timer, and the sergeant at arms. Now, some of the things that you cover, of course, are the contest rules, the eligibility and originality. And that's kind of important that you check eligibility first. And I want to come back to something I wanted to mention. For those of you who may do an area contest in March, as well as those who do a division contest in March, we collect dues in March for the next period. That person and that club still needs to be eligible on 1 April, which means the club needs to have 8 members and be in good standing, and the member has to have paid their dues, and the dues have been paid to Toastmasters. So, and we've seen it. Contestants in March are eligible. They're not more eligible in April. They still have time before the May conference to become eligible, but it's important that they pay attention to that and that their club pays attention to that. So it's not good to say that someone eligible in March is easily eligible for the district contest. They may not be. It needs to be checked again. It should be checked at every conference level, but contest level, just to be safe. At the dry run, you also brief the judging criteria. Now, part of the packet, it's not recommended by TI, but I always did it in my packet, Suri. I would always put a copy of the ballot for the evaluators or for the international speakers so they could look at it. And part of my email to them would say, look at the judging criteria. Verity Price recently did a wonderful evaluation workshop in District 101. And one of the things she pointed out is that we look at evaluation a certain way within the club. But when we're giving a contest evaluation, it has certain criteria that it must be met to earn the points to move you forward. So it's important that the contestants understand you could be great at the club level, but make sure, is your content clear? Are you being specific? Do you have a conclusion? Because they're looking for that. That's a 15-point judging criteria about a conclusion. And as a judge, sometimes I've actually no conclusion, 15 points gone from that person right off the top. So we want them to understand that, yeah, you're good at what you do, but in the contest, you also want to try to meet the criteria. So I like to make sure dry runs review the judging criteria. It's a good time to go over it. I do like to put it in the packet as well.
Did you say for the dry run, it's only Toastmaster, Chief Judge, and contestant? That's it? No
I'm at
timer, no ballot?
timer, Sergeant Arms, timer, tech chair, chief judge, contestant. And keep in
Okay,
mind,
everybody in the
yeah,
dry run, right?
well, yeah, but you don't have judges, you don't have ballot counters, and the contest chair is always there, by the way. The contest chair
Yes.
is always at the dry runs, both the contestant one and the chief judge one. So, but these are the people you should invite, yes. Is that clear? Or you still have a
Yes, so
question?
just no ballot counter and
No judges.
no judges. Yes,
Yeah.
got it. Thank you.
Now, we don't cover judging here. We covered it in the chief judge thing. But some of these people, for instance, the chief judge, the tech chair, the timer, and the sergeant at arms will also be at the chief judge or the judge's dry run. Just to let you know, as contest chair. And if you want to talk more about the contest chair separately, we can do that. Okay, so you're going to brief the judging criteria, brief the defined speaking area. Clearly, you have a defined speaking area in your in-person contest. Clearly, this is our defined speaking area in our online contest. As most of you know from attending online contests, if I move out of the speaking area, no points are deducted. It's not to be considered by the judges. It may impact the overall effect of my speech, but there's no judging criteria. However, in a physical contest, one gentleman I know left the speaking area and went running around the audience, and actually he was disqualified. He left the speaking area. So you have to be clear of what your speaking area is and what the rules are. And by the way, sir, if you choose not to disqualify someone who does something like that's your contest chair and chief judge conversation. But the speaking area is generally to keep people in the best view of the judges and the audience so they have the best opportunity to present themselves. Clearly online, this is it. We also go over the originality and eligibility criteria. I was at a contest at the semifinal level and the protest was saved. Now this individual had cleared their club, they cleared their quarterfinal, they made it to the semifinals, and they were given a speech verbatim that was on the internet. It wasn't original. So the person had signed 3 originality certificates, but it wasn't original. And when brought in for the protest, he admitted it. So the originality, it's important to indicate what originality includes. Now, again, I'm not going to go through all of that here, but some of that is done. The chief judge can explain that more at the dry run. Well, I will go through it. Let's go through it. So, for instance, if you quote somebody, you should say who it is. If I quote Todd and use his quote, which is published, I need to say, as Todd Gatien says, da 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 da. I need to say that, even in evaluation. In an international speech, 25% or less of your speech can be non-original, which means 75% of your speech must be original. Same thing happens in an international speech. If I quote somebody, if I refer to a book or movie, then it should be cited that I'm citing that book or movie. We actually had at a district conference when I was a chief judge, an individual gave a quote, no attribution to anybody, and it was a disqualifier, on a protest. The other one you have for originality is that in the international contest, a speaker because the speakers are all in the room together. They're all watching and seeing each other. A speaker may not refer to another contestant's speech. I can't say in my speech, you know, as Philip said in his speech earlier, I've just disqualified myself. So again, those things need to be explained. For evaluation, because they never see the previous evaluation, their biggest thing is if they attribute a quote. It's going to, for originality. Yes, Philip.
So, Lazar, you just mentioned the non-attributed quote leading to a disqualification after a protest.
Right.
If no one brings up that protest, then that unattributed quote just goes along.
Go by.
Okay. So now I'm sorry to ask, but remind me, who can protest?
Yeah, that's a really excellent question. I'm glad you asked that. Only, and I'm stressing this, only contestants or voting judges. Let's say I'm the chief judge. I know that that quote went unattributed. I can't protest. Suri's the contest chair. She knows it's not a trip. She can't protest. Must be a contestant or a voting judge. And by voting judge, for those, because we cover that in the judges and we're doing judges next week as well, and we did it in the chief judge, that means the tiebreaker judge is not considered a voting judge. So the tiebreaker judge can't protest. So if you as a contestant, you hear it and you don't think it's worth a protest, and quite frankly, it wasn't worth a protest for the person who did it. It wasn't like the guy was really trying to get away with something, but that wasn't up to me. I was the chief judge. You know, I mean, I ignored it myself. I actually heard it and I said, but it was a protest. So, if neither a contestant or judge levels the protest, there's no protest. Thanks for asking that, Philip. Great clarification. All right, then the other thing you want to do is for the evaluation contest, and if you're doing table topics, it's similar, but for the evaluation contest, you want to go through the breakout room procedure for your evaluation contestants. You want to let them know how it's going to be done. If you're doing your dry run online, which is what the recommendation would be because your contest is, make a breakout room, walk them into going in, do the introductions, call them out, you know, let them go back and forth and experience the process so they get familiar with it so they're not as jittery about it on the day of the contest. And we already touched how the breakout room is managed on the breakout room management slides. Now, verify and learn how to pronounce the contestant names. I've literally, and I'm sure you have too, been at a contest where the Toastmaster said, is that Suri? Is it Suri? Am I saying it right? Well, heck, the Toastmaster should have known that before the contest started. Shouldn't be making it up. I should be doing my best as contest Toastmaster to be highlighting the contestant and also to know how to pronounce their speech titles. You know, I've seen Toastmasters get tripped up on the speech titles because they never looked at the speech title and verified them at the dry run. Verify the speech titles, verify the pronunciation of the name, be clear about that. And that's a courtesy to the contestant in my mind. Do an actual audio and video check for each contestant. Now, as part of this audio and video check, I recommend you go through the contest procedure. How are they going to be introduced? When they're called to the thing, how are you going to do the audio and video check? If you're doing it in person, what's good, Suri, for the dry run, if you're doing an in-person contest, is actually have a mic set up and actually have them come up, be introduced, and then speak to the mic so they can be comfortable about speaking to the mic when they start. It's not the same as when we do the audio and video check online, but it just gives them that familiarity with the process. Now, keep in mind, we're going to come back to the audio and video check on the day of the contest because it is very typical for a contestant to say, well, you know, I'm on my phone today, but I'm going to be using my laptop for the contest. So we walk them through the process at the dry run. Here's how they'll be introduced. Here's how you'll be asked, can you see the timer? You know, a timer, can you see the speaker? Here's how you'll be spotlighted, and the timer will be spotlighted, and how all that'll go. And then you'll be introduced by the Toastmaster and you're ready to go. We go through that process anyway, even if it's not the same technology that they'll use the day of the contest. This is where we
Yeah,
come to. Go ahead. Yes, Suri.
is it necessary to have a microphone?
No, actually, if you're not having a large enough venue that you're using microphones or headsets or any kind of audio, then no, don't use a microphone if you don't have to. So I'm sorry if that confused you when I shared that. But I was just saying,
It's okay.
if you're using any technology for the contestants, use it during the dry run. Let them try it out. On the day of the contest, usually as a contest chair, Toastmaster, I actually ask 30 minutes before the start time of the event for all contestants to be there. And we run through with the tech chair another audio and video check. We can't do this 10 minutes before. We can't do this 5 minutes before. We need to, one, make sure they're there, make sure they've named themselves properly, make sure that the audio and video they came to the contest with works, and then we need to release the tech chair back to being the tech chair for the event. So do it in plenty of time. So I always do it a half hour in advance. Collect speaker originality and eligibility forms if not already received. You collect them at the dry run. If you should have them before that contest day to make sure, and the chief judge needs to have the eligibility as well. Collect the profile forms at the dry run. If you haven't already received them, get them as soon as possible because you want to use that to frame some of your questions. And chief judge at the dry run briefs the protest procedure. Now, I'm not going to go into protest procedure here because we covered that on contest chair. We covered that on chief judge, and we'll cover it again next week on the judges. Suri, if you want more about that, I can actually talk to you about that because this is really about these functionaries. There's a question in the chat. Let's take a look. Yes, the slides are actually shared and they're put into that directory that I showed for the contest resources. So thank you for asking that.
So Lazar, excuse me,
You're
these are also
excused.
going
Don't let it happen again.
there you go. These are also going to be on the they always have been and will continue to be in the D101 district website under contest resources, correct?
Yeah, I'm assuming, I don't know if the slides have been added so far, Raji. I would probably think not. But certainly the video will be up on the YouTube channel and we can get the slides added there as well on the D101 contest resources.
That would be great for the slide to share there on the web. So, because I'm not going to remember everything, but I wanted to go back to get some resource for, to prepare.
Sure, yeah.
Also, I don't know if you mentioned this, if the script already posted to the contest
Yes.
script?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The scripts are posted, yeah. So. But I'm going to take them down right after this training just to make you guess. Yeah, the scripts are there. So the chief judge will brief the protest procedure, which only can be done, as we said, by a contestant or a voting judge. And then very often now, depending on when you do your dry run in person, Suri, I'm going to give you several options here. Generally online, the speaking order is drawn at the dry run. Todd, you've got a question, so I don't want to move forward before we address your question.
I just had a question about the only two sets of people that can launch a protest. So you said it's the contestant and or a judge.
The voting
And
judge.
and that has to be done before the results are announced.
That's correct.
So I was at a contest on the weekend that just passed, and for some reason the contest went longer than it should have. Well, I know all the reasons why it did. And one of the speakers had to leave. So the club president is now contesting the contest because his contestant was not allowed to speak because the contest lasted longer than it was expected to, and is now calling for a redo of the whole contest. That's not possible, is it?
No. Remember, I'm echoing somewhere. I don't know. Is that you? Might be you, Todd. There's only two criteria for a protest. It has to be eligibility. The person's not eligible, or originality. Their material is not original. So if I should leave a contest before I speak, it's not a grounds for protest. It's certainly a ground for people to pick a fight with each other, because it doesn't take much for that, but it's not a grounds for protest.
Okay. I'm glad you're giving this kind of training to this district, because I would have thought this other district that I'm a part of had adequate training, but I literally in 28 years have not seen such a poorly run contest because the left hand, the right hand didn't know what's happening.
Well, you
All
can
of
think,
all of the mistakes you're talking about in here, getting the names wrong, getting the rules wrong. Oh my gosh.
well, you can thank Raji for this. This is really Ravi's brainchild. She wanted to have all these sessions to try to inform the district the best they could about contests. So, kudos to our PQD for having that foresight. So let's go now to draw speaking order. So what I was saying is, generally in an in-person contest, speaking order wasn't drawn till the day of the contest. They would come in early in the morning and do it, before the contest began. Online, generally it's done at the dry run. Now, by the way, Suri, and you can do it at the dry run too. I don't really care. I'm just saying, by practice, that's how it was done. Now, I still recommend, even in an in-person contest, that you use the randomizer. It's just essentially, you just put it in. It has a box that has list items box. You put the names alphabetically. You select the randomizer button, and voila, you now have a random list of people. I like to do that online and cut to it so they can see it. Share the screen so they can see it. And they're all very clear of their first, second, third, fourth, or fifth. You can do the same thing for your in-person one, depending on how many people you have, because you could just have a laptop there and do it, and they can all see it happen. Now, the other thing, if you don't have a whole lot of people, we used to use numbered tiles in bags, playing cards, all kinds of things just to give an order to things. But this randomizer is a welcome gift to use for selecting the order. Now, the order.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the order does not have to be done at the dry run. Whoops. Bless you, whoever. The drawing doesn't have to be done at the dry run. As I said, it can be done later. But my recommendation, the way things work now, is I think no later than the night before the contest, if it's a day contest, or the day before, if it's an evening contest, so that you can tell the contestants and let the chief judge know, because he or she wants the judges to start preparing their ballots with the names in the order that the contestants will speak. And that's just a little bit of an efficiency. And then the contestants need to know how to name themselves. This is still dry run, by the way. Name themselves for their contest and speaking order. So if you're an evaluation contest contestant, it's going to be EV number, which is your speaking order number, and your name. If you're international, IS number and the name. And the number just represents the specific speaking order of the contestant. We want them to also, that's what we do at that morning when they come before the contest. We check audio, video, We check that they have their speaking order in front of their name. Because when things happen, for instance, if there is a protest and the chief judge needs to say, I need international contestant 5, it makes it easy for the tech chair to find them and move them into the breakout room for discussion. So it also helps for the evaluation to move all the evaluators into the breakout room. You know, they don't have to search for names. They can just pull all the EVs alphabetically from the participant list and get them all in there. Whoop. Where am I going? There we go. Now, in the morning of the contestant, you do a morning setup with the functionaries to ensure they're present as well. So usually as a contest Toastmaster, I'd have to set up for the contestants and the functionaries at the same time. First thing I'm going to do is just make sure my functionaries are there. I'm going to have a timer in the room in case any contestant has a question about the timing and the timing lights. We also run through the timing at the dry run. We actually do it. We show them the lights and how the lights are done and how it stays. We go through all of that. But we also redo that the morning of the contest so that we get those last minute jitters done. We check their audio and video. We make sure they've renamed themselves with their contestant number and that their technology is working. If someone's technology is not working, we kind of move them, we move everybody else out if it's working, and we work with them to try to get it working. Generally, we actually had in one contest, it was an international speech contest. Contestant came in, the morning run, his technology was working. Contestant was introduced, name, speech title, name. He went to speak, nothing came out. He was not muted. We had him adjust his muting because, you know, we have that time frame that can be called for by the chief judge or contest chair to say, let's take a moment to try to fix the technology. And we ended up having to move that contestant out of the lineup, go to the next contestant, and then somebody went into a breakout room and worked with him on his technology. And he came back in at the end to do his presentation. So when you do an online contest, there's never too much technology check you can do. And the Toastmaster must be familiar with the contest script. Probably said that before. But it gives the flow. A key thing about the scripts too, and I want to stress for all of you, the scripts lay out what you're expected to cover. You may change the words, but cover those items. You don't have to use those exact words. You know, nobody expects you to speak like someone else. But it's laid out in a script so people understand these things need to be covered. Please cover those things. I see a lot of people when they adjust the scripts, they take things out and they take out material that should be covered. Timer, you must have 2 timers, a primary and a secondary. And I know people say, why? Why do you need that? Well, it's a couple of reasons, and we'll try to cover them all. First place in the contest, you're going to have 1 timer on screen at all times, primary timer. At the same time, your secondary timer is going to be off screen, their video off, but they're timing at the same time. They're changing their backgrounds at the same time. That way, if for some reason the primary timer is cut off, we just have the video of the secondary timer turned on. And from a perspective for the contestants and everyone else, there should be no disruption. The green should be the green on both screens, the yellow. Yes, they might be off by a second or 2. That's okay. But we want to make sure that timing is continuous through every presentation. The backgrounds for the timers should be the same. And we actually provide these. And I'm going to tell you, these are my preference, and that's why we provide them. I'm going to tell you a couple of things. So some clubs like to use a black background with white letters. So if you look at the screen right now, you can see that people who don't have their video on have black backgrounds with white letters. We want the timer to be absolutely identifiable. So I prefer the white background with the black letters. I also prefer each of the colors to have the name on it. So in case there is any semblance of color blindness in a person, they explicitly know what the color is. Or diminished vision. It's very clear that way. The other part is, however you choose to do it, if you choose not to do these, the timers should have the exact same timing backgrounds. And do not use countdown timer backgrounds. We're not counting down the time form in front of the speaker. That's why we have timers doing that. We want timing to be incidental to the presentation. Have a backup light or timing cards in case it goes out. So each timer should at least have a set of backup timing cards of some sort or a backup light. But again, if timer 1 goes out, timer 2 comes up. If timer 2 goes out, we need a backup. So have plenty of backups. Timing is too critical. It's the same thing with your timing device. Have a backup. I'm using my phone. My phone goes out, I have a stopwatch. Try to do that type of thing. They should go to 10th of a second. And I know Philip has heard this before because he's been at the other sessions. I was the chief judge at a district contest on evaluation. And I had 2 timers. And I got a timing report from one that said the speaker was just over 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And I had a timing report from the other timer that said she was right on time. So I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Well, later on, the other timer told me, yeah, my timing didn't go to 10th of a second, so she went a little long. So what I do as a chief judge, which is not part of this, is I always give the benefit of the doubt to the contestant, and that's why I have 2 timers. If one says they went long, one says they're on time, I'm going to give them on time. Same thing for short. One says they're short, one says they're in time, I'm going to give them time. Yes, Philip.
To that point, Solazar, as either a contest chair or a chief judge, I like to talk to the timers specifically regarding when they should start. So if you haven't timed at a contest before, you don't know that those moments before a speaker speaks, if he or she is literally just standing there, they're looking around, they're gathering their breath. I've seen speakers do this all the way up from area to international contest level. And they'll take that one last deep breath. Sometimes, if you don't know any better, a timer is timing that, and that should not be something that's timed. And so that can also show that discrepancy in the timer's watches too. If it's only literally 100th or a 10th of a second, that's one thing. But if you've got 10 or 20 seconds between timers, that indicates to me that one of those timers either was too early, probably, or too late. But I think almost always too early. And I've seen that happen, and it's broken my heart because these Toastmaster people, they know exactly how long their speech is. And they come in at 7:29, and they are sensitive about how long their evaluations are. And they come in at 2:29. Or 3:29. I was at table topics in my mind there. So those are the things we have to make sure the timer knows beforehand, before we get to whether or not we're hundredths or tenths.
Excellent. And that's an excellent point. So thank you for bringing that up, Philip, because it is important. And it does make a difference to make sure you go over with them. Now, Form 1175, Speech Contest Time Record Sheet, actually explains some of that. Now, for an online contest, of course, I don't use these, but I still give it to my timers. And we'll touch on that in a second. And they should be familiar with the script also. They need to be familiar with the flow. Add in Philip's information as well. They need to know when to start. It must be an overt gesture toward the audience, not just a breath. And not even necessarily a side turn to the side. But if I make a gesture, start your timing. And we need to go over that. And the Toastmaster, the chief judge really needs to review that with the timers. And then we have the ballot counters. They work for the chief judge, but since they're not covered in detail anywhere else, we touched on them in the chief judge. You should have 2 ballot counters. 3 is always better. They use the Form 1175 Speech Contest Time Record Sheet. So this is the counters tally for the ballot counters, and this is the Speech Contest Time Record Sheet for timers. And it gives information here about what to start and what to do and exactly to do it. And as Philip said, the chief judge needs to go over the ballot counters' roles and the timers' roles with them so they know when to start, as well as how to report. The timers need to know how to report, which is covered in the chief judge briefing. This is the form we give you for electronically compiling your results. Now, you can use this even if you're doing an in-person contest if you choose. But what you do here is you put in the contestant names alphabetically, you put in the judges' names, and the timer, I mean, not the timer, and the ballot counters, chief judge, all take a look at judge number one, who is their number one contestant, and you add in points. These go, whoops, these go by points, not place. So the judges are already reporting first, second, and third, but they do the points and it compiles automatically. So play with this. There's one up there for evaluation. There's another tab down on the evaluation for international. And this is what I use to compile with the ballot counters. Again, I'm not going detail here because we went over detail in the chief judge, and we'll actually go over more of the detail when we talk with the judges later. So, oops, I came back, I stopped sharing. I guess I'm tired of sharing. What I want to do is go forward. It's all found at this URL, and I'll put that in to the chat. tinyurl.com, District 101-contest resources. And then Raji has asked me to go up and look at the D101 contest resources to make sure we have everything there, and I'll be doing that this weekend. So you'll have this link, and you should also check what's on District 101. This is what's on the link up above in the Google Drive: certificates, chief judge and judge information, chief judge briefing, club contest, club email, organizing contest protocol list, results and notification rulebook, sample program, scripts, speaker forms, tech guidelines, timer and ballot counters, timer background, Toastmaster briefing, training slides, and the videos from the different briefings, although this one Raji's doing, so I won't have it up there. So that covers everything, and these are some of the items that are included in the resources. Guidelines how to conduct and promote a contest, and Suri, you probably certainly want to look at how to conduct the contest, how to put it together, the contest chair information, contest planning templates, eligibility checkers, briefing checklists, etc., and so on and so on. That covers the functionaries in the contest. So are there any additional questions?
So Lazar, who gets you? Who gets you every contest season?
Actually, probably this season, probably nobody.
Is it because you haven't been asked, or is it because you say we need some young bucks coming up and doing this for us?
Well, I am always willing to help, but for instance, I don't want to be a chief judge. I want somebody else to be a chief judge. I don't want to be a Toastmaster. I want someone else to be which goes to your second point. Do we want other people coming up to do these things? If it is necessary or essential, I'm absolutely happy to do it if I'm available. So I can be asked. And if I'm available, I would certainly do it. But I should not be your go-to person. I should be the person you come to if something falls apart, But we do want to do what Philip said. We want other people coming up and doing these things and learning it. And keep in mind, I got to say this, we're that learning lab. We make mistakes. We're going to flub it. We're going to screw things up. But with some of these guidelines, we can at least try to do the best we can. That's really what we're hoping for, especially if we can at least get names and speech titles right. that's such a thing. So here is the link to that contest resource area. Yes, Todd.
I was going to say, do you also request that the judges have assisted or attended the judge training workshop? And if so, how often does District 101 run that? And number two question was, this is for clubs, areas, divisions, and district contests? And if yes, what is the maximum number of areas that should combine in an area contest?
Well, there's no rule for the maximum number of areas. So I'm going to answer that first. I'll try to work my way backwards. So the recommendation would be, though, it should only be areas within a division. So you shouldn't say, okay, Division B and Division A, let's bring all our areas together and do a contest. Keep the areas within the division. And so, for instance, Division A has 4 areas. The 4 areas are going to do their contest together in the area contest. You know, and a lot of that is based on participation as well. So let's talk about just the 4 areas. Let's say traditionally each of these areas produced 5 contestants. Well, then you don't want to have a combined contest with the areas. It's too many contestants. It's too long. It's too onerous on the contestants as well as the contest and attendees themselves. So a lot of times when the combination is happening, it's happening because they're not producing sufficient contestants from the areas to get a usual contest. So I would say keep them within the division and also take a look at the number of contestants before you start combining. Second thing is, obviously that's a non-division issue. Divisions don't combine. And I actually thought you were going to ask about the number of judges. You had another question at the start there.
Does District 101
Oh.
put on a judging workshop, and then only judges who have done the workshop can be official judges at a contest?
Okay. Not prior. We are doing judges next week, next Thursday, but we've not previously made it a requirement. But there is a Toastmaster recommendation, and one is an area judge should be somebody who is at least a judge at their club contest. A division judge should at least be somebody who's been an area judge, and again, for district, we want to preferably have people who have been judges at division contests. Now, Toastmasters allows a little latitude in that, but other than that, those should be the guidelines. Because at division or district, we certainly don't want to be training or teaching somebody how to be a judge. We want them to have had at least some experience with that. And I don't know, I can't answer this, but I'm going to suppose, since there's never a mention in the contest rulebook from Toastmasters about judges training, I also think we may not be able to create a requirement that thou must go through the training in order to be a judge.
But there is a requirement that judges sit in with the chief judge and get debriefed.
That's correct. The chief judge, as you recall, Philip, in the chief judge training, there is a dry run for the judges and the ballot counters and the timers and the sergeant at arms and the tech chair. That's strictly for them, no contestants. But they need to be briefed and they need to be walked through the criteria for judging. Once again, like we talked about earlier about evaluation contestants, the judges need to know they're not evaluating anybody. They're judging against specific criteria. Keeping in mind that we cannot take away anybody's bias. It's still going to come out, but we want to try to make it as neutral as possible. Yes, Todd.
Would you also use the rule of thumb that for each contest, if you have like 3 or 4 contestants, that you're going to probably want to allocate an hour's worth of time for each of those contests, for the international and for the evaluation in this case? So therefore, don't be trying to squish it into like 1 hour's worth of time in an afternoon or an evening.
Well, my general recommendation is if you're doing an evaluation and international contest together, plan 3 hours. But then you also want to take a look at how you allocate the time based on the number of contestants. So for instance, an evaluation is 3 minutes, 3 minutes and 30 seconds, plus a minute of silence. So what does that give you? 5 minutes per contestant, because you're keeping a little slack there for overlaps or anything else. Now that doesn't mean everybody's going to use 3 minutes, 30 seconds, but you want to plan it that way. So international is the same way. You've got 7 minutes, 30 seconds, a minute of silence, So you want to then say, okay, I've got 9 minutes per contestant in the international and plan it that way. And so you want to allocate it that way instead of, like you said, just saying, oh, we can do this in an hour. It's only 3 and 3. Well, you really can't do it effectively in an hour. Plus, you're tallying ballots. Even if you're only tallying 3 ballots, you're still tallying ballots. There's some time that goes into that. So I always say when you run the two together, plan on 3 hours because we don't mind leaving early, but none of us like to. Oh yeah, they said we'd be done at 11:30. Look, it's 12:15.
Do you think for two contestant for each contest, hour and a half is good, or I should do two?
I think you could take a look at it, and an hour and a half should be enough at a club level. At an area level, I
Okay.
would say plan for 2 anyway,
Yes.
just so that you can leave early.
Okay. I just the reason my asking is that when we do agenda, which in the past we do agenda for the contest too, and I wanted the time. So if we say 1.5 or 2, I just wanted to stick with the schedule.
Right. And the other thing you could consider, I'm just going to give you an idea, is that if you choose to get 2 chief judges, you can have 1 Toastmaster. But what you can do is the evaluation chief judge and ballot counters can be out there compiling ballots. You could go from the evaluation contest, no interviews, go into the international contest, do all the interviews at the end, but you have to have a chief judge present in the room. That's why I said you could have 2 chief judges, and then do all the interviews at the end. And that would give you enough time to get the international ballots tallied. The evaluation would already be done, and you could get done in 90 minutes. So you could actually just say, we'll interview everybody at the end because we only have 4 people. But you need to have a chief judge in the room when you start the international. So if you have 1 out tallying for evaluation, you need another one in the room to do international. But that way you can truncate it down. And you don't have to have ballot counters present in the room during the contest. They can come back in during the contest, but you have to have a chief judge there. Are you thinking about that, or did I confuse you? Well,
I'm sorry, I'm good.
Oh, okay.
I'm at home and my dog loves to bark, so I have to put myself on mute.
Okay,
Sorry.
I understand. Well, any additional questions? Oh, I didn't mean I sent that, actually, I sent that link just to Raji. I meant to send it to all of you. I apologize there. There you go. And here's my email if you have follow-on questions. And I'll be working with Raji to make sure we get all of this. It's probably already up there, but I just need to make sure all of it, and we'll get the training slides on there as well. In the meantime, the training slides are at the link that I put into the chat. Okay. Well, thank you all. I can return you to your lives, although I'm not sure there's life beyond Toastmasters. I think it's a myth.
So thank you so much again. Every time I leave one of your trainings, I'm smarter.
Well, thank you. Well, what I appreciate is all the contributions too. The questions really help, and I think they're of value to people who also see the recording later. So I thank you for your participation.
Oh God.
I heard him. I heard
Thank
him.
you. I'm sorry. Thank you so
Sorry.
much.
Thanks, Salazar. Thanks.
All right. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you. Okay, bye.
Raji, did you stop recording, or no, it's still recording? So Todd, you'll find everything at that link. that you're looking for?
Well, I don't plan on being a contest chair or a chief judge, considering I'm in different districts already at division level competition. I'm the competitor. I just like to be well versed on both sides of the fence when people try to pull BS situations to create unequal advantages.
Well, hopefully the material there would help you with that as well. So I'm going to end the meeting. So I'm going to say good night, Todd. Thanks for coming. Thank you, Raji, for the recording. And if we probably can talk later. Good night.